How to build a free society, an Elevate community discussion event. Following my podcast where I shared a number of different strategies where we could take different approaches to restore the value of freedom and build a more free society, we invited our community members to join us for a discussion around how we could put some of these strategies and tactics into action. And it was a fascinating session. We were together for 2 hours, split into 4 different groups, looking at these different strategies, coming up with lots of different ideas. Now, unfortunately, the discussion session where people broke into groups was not recorded. We couldn't capture those individual breakouts. But what we've got for you is the debrief where each of our groups shared some of their key takeaways. And it's a fascinating discussion. So you'll hear some insights around how we can use political activism, how we can use tactical withdrawal, how we can use winning hearts and minds, building a counterculture, and how we can start to think about building parallel structures, alternative societies, and so on in order to build a more free society. It's an amazing discussion, really varied set of ideas, and you'll also hear how we can explore taking these forward. So if you're not yet a member of the Elevate community, I would urge you to come and join us at weareelevate.org. We host many different discussion events like this. We have lots more planned. And of course, we're really keen to take these ideas into reality and to support change makers who are already driving these things forward, but also to help people get ideas off the ground. So if it sounds like the kind of thing you'd like to be involved with, head over to weareelevate.org, come and join us inside the community, join the discussion, and let's see how we can elevate humanity and enrich the world. So for now, enjoy this amazing discussion with members of the Elevate community. Okay, so I asked you to nominate a person from your group to be responsible for sharing back your ideas. So who took responsibility for the political activism group? John, welcome to the stage. Please unmute and look forward to hearing your group's takeaways. Now, in order for this to be timely, we're going to give each group 5 minutes to share their key takeaways. So hopefully, John, that'll be sufficient for you.
Okay. I mean, it's a great group. We had a lot of discussion. The summary of it is we need to focus on what we can change and not what is wrong, which I think echoes something you said a few minutes ago. We covered, so the first area was there was lots of little things that can be done. And that doesn't mean that they're not important, but just niggling and things, all the areas like the yellow board, stand in the park. There was a suggestion about the mayor does open evenings to churn up en masse to those, ask the questions about what they're doing about 15-minute cities and so on. So there's things which are small, which everyone can do. We then talked about some of the political parties. There was a suggestion of starting a People's Party. We also talked about the other political parties that are in existence and how do we start to look at bringing them together. And because at the moment it's lots of little groups, and there was questioning about how we can consolidate them. And we had one of the members of the Freedom Alliance within our group. There was a strong feeling that we need to hold current politicians accountable. And how do we do that? And the challenge is, particularly, we need to also hold the media to account. Normally, the media would put a spotlight on a politician that was behaving nefariously. At the moment, they literally amplify those actions. We talked about tribunals, but really there's really no obvious avenue to shame politicians. And in fact, politicians seem to be completely able to do whatever they want. And any politician that does speak out, like Andrew Bridgen or something, it gets cut down. We talked about the other organizations which exist, and there are lots of organizations in this area. We particularly, there was the Together Declaration that a number of people were involved in, and looking at how perhaps there can be improved communication, because people were saying that although they've suggested ideas, they don't feel that there's other way back. But that's and also when you joined us briefly, Dan, we talked about how Elevate could also help these processes. And we also had Louise from Save Our Rights, who also contributed. She was also saying that in terms of Save Our Rights can offer pointers as to how you can talk to MPs and get more response from them. And she also posted about their latest way of navigating the digital ID thing. And I'm sure she could post it again into the chat now. It's on this line. One of our group left because she felt that as soon as you start talking about politics, you're talking about fear and despondency, and it's heavy and it's so on. And so looking at ways in which we can lighten the mood, make it fun, do other things. We talked about common law. We talked about how we can get our powers back and some of the ideas that people have suggested around that. We talked about the links that we saw with Hearts and Minds, that actually winning people. I mentioned about the Jordan Peterson interview with Joe Rogan last week, where he talked about the problem with the Joseph taking all the men all the slaves out into to the promised land, and he ended up in a desert, and he spent his whole time, morning, noon, and night, dealing with problems that they were bringing to him. And someone came and said, look, this is stupid. What you do is you divide everybody into groups of 10, and each group of 10 elects one leader, and then you get 10 leaders together and they elect one leader, and then you get 10 groups of 10 leaders, and you basically only problems that are not solved by the lower levels are brought to you, Joseph. And that's what he did, and that's the principle of subsidiarity. So there's lots of ideas that are going around. And so looking at, and the other thought about small groups is getting a small group of 9 or 10, and then perhaps splitting the small group and say, look, 5 of us are going to go here and 5 of us will go here, and we'll build up to 10 each. So you start like an amoeba. So that's, I think, a summary. I'm sure our group would have lots of other things that they could contribute, but that's my 5 minutes worth.
Thank you, John. Right on time. Very well done. Thank you for your contributions. And with tonight, this is a starting point. I think what we'll see when we talk about the next steps is there'll be people who are drawn to the different subjects and that would like to continue the conversation and explore this in more depth. So we'll certainly come to that when we come to the conclusions. So thank you, John. The second group was about tactical withdrawal, how we can start to live free from the clutches of the current systems and structures. Who took the group number 2? Who led that one?
I don't think we chose a leader, I'm afraid. We had a very interesting conversation, but we didn't actually choose a leader. And I'm not sure.
I think
Anna. We chose Anna.
I think
Francis.
Okay. I think it was me and Russell, but yeah, I'll do it.
Sure. Thank you.
Okay. So yeah, I mean, with this one, tactical withdrawal, we could have gone into so much, but actually we could have also carried on talking for 3 hours. But we discussed initially about using more cash and different ways of payment. It was discussed about Bitcoin and crypto. We had quite an interesting discussion about like the benefits and issues related to that. I actually talked about a community that I'm involved in South Cumbria. So the theme of that was about finding your tribe. So just how important it is to, because a few of the people were saying how isolated they were feeling, and a lot of their neighbours and things aren't necessarily on the same wavelength, so it's just a bit difficult to find that. So I explained about how the community was built out of the stand in the parks, and also about we talked about like People's Health Alliance. So the community, I'll just give a website if people want to look at it. It's ourcumbria.co.uk. So I just discussed about about the different things that we've been learning and moving towards. So initially it started as wanting to create a system in opposition really to the NHS, but actually what it's ended up doing is we're just gaining our health from the community. So we talked quite in length about that, and then we talked about what is in our local communities and utilising that. You know, getting to know your farmer, getting to know the local food growers. Also, we talked about common law as well. So it was talked about the Sovereign's Way course and about gaining sovereignty away from fear and kind of gaining that strength to kind of step back, looking at how to pull away from kind of the tax system and things. I mean, we could have just carried on talking for ages. Russell, was there anything else?
Yeah, there were six areas largely. You've covered most of them, I think, though, Anna. We did look at no cash and crypto, as you've mentioned. We also looked at food sustainability, and that's where your group came in terms of growing your own food. We also talked about making alliances with local producers, such as farmers, and using those rather than going to supermarkets. So coming out of the system there. Humanity health, which was something you brought up as well, Anna, which I think leads into the People's Health Alliance and the Alliance for Natural Health, which we discussed. We also looked from a technology point of view about using alternative solutions, so things like Linux and using alternative internet search engines such as Mojig or Presearch or Swiss Cows for searching rather than using Google or Microsoft. Off-grid living, which again goes back to ourcumbria.co.uk, which is Anna's organisation. And as Anna mentioned there, sovereign and common law, which we touched upon at the end. So it was a really good discussion, but I think what came out of it for me was really the idea that what we need to be doing is creating communities, whether that's you and your family or your extended family, your friends or other like-minded individuals, because that's where our strength lies. And we discussed a couple of options that we've had, particularly for myself around the London boroughs that are coming into the ULEZ under Khan's new diktat, you know, Bexley and Bromley, and I think Hillingdon as well, and maybe have all said that they're not going to put the cameras up that are needed for this to come into force. And so there's people power, you know, going to local meetings with the council and making your views known, which is what John was talking about in the earlier session there as well. So really, it's about creating those communities to become self-sufficient and to sustain yourselves individually and as a group as well, which was really the way that we believe that we can defeat this. Thank you, Dan. Thank you, Anna. And thank you, everybody on the group. It is a really lively discussion.
Amazing. I don't know if you guys are putting timers on, but you're literally landing right on the 5 minutes. Incredible. Good. So I noticed Richard's comment, you know, the top 10 takeaways. I think what would be great from tonight is we can assimilate the various things that have been shared and start to document some of these ideas, because the reality is some of the solutions are already out there. You've mentioned things like the Public Health, the People's Health Alliance, various other resources. You know, there's action list. We can compile things that people can do, but there's also resources that we can signpost, and you know, we can share that within Elevate, but we can also distribute it with other organizations. So we've got shared outcomes. Thank you to Group 2. Excellent discussion, and great to hear that you could continue the discussion. I think it's food for thought about how we can facilitate longer form discussions, including weekend events and things like that. So thank you very much, Anna, and your group. Okay, Group 3 was how to build a counterculture movement, how to win hearts and minds. Who's our spokesperson for Group 3? Great stuff. Welcome back. I'm just going to add you to the screen. There we go. Fanola, over to you.
I can. So we had a lively discussion as well. I may not take 5 minutes because I'm kind of want to précis things very, very briefly. But Sheila can, I think it's, the woman who was chairing maybe has some to add. So I've kind of proceeded into starting from ourselves, to create a counterculture, it's about, we've got to be really clear about where we're individually coming from, our experiences, and sharpening our own arguments within our mind, and also taking with personal responsibility of the effect that we have in terms of how we interact with others. So we also, we were talking about towards the end about looking after ourselves and raising our energy continuously to stay out of the fear, stay out of stay up in the vibration of love. And that might be a bit woo-woo for some people, but in order to for us to affect other people, we really need to be in a place where we can have the most impact. There was also this talk around slowing down, becoming present, stepping into our creative thinking, and educating more and around creativity, building community, whether that be talking to one person or going to talk to our neighbours, is having one conversation, perhaps starting with one topic in our communities, and that leads to the next. And someone was talking about you know, just going and starting to going and picking up litter, and other people would come along and start asking, you know, why this person was doing what they were doing, and the conversation kind of starts there. So it's around the drip feeding, that we can't go in with everything all guns blazing, is that to win hearts and minds, we need to start where people are. And I remember this was something that we had at the event that I went at Paddington Farm, was talking about moving people one along the dial, just from, and then people need to think that they've thought of the answers themselves. So that's how we win hearts and minds. Being mindful of you know, labeling others and creating division, and supporting people to themselves step out their fear, because there's a lot of fear out there, and fear shuts our thinking down. What else do we have? Yeah, a lot about using creativity. So being ingenious about how we take action, and when we do creative things at in the local community, again, we start conversations. When you're doing something creative, that kind of opens up our mind, and people are a bit more open perhaps to having conversations about different things. Learning new skills ourselves and becoming more self-sufficient, and then teaching those skills maybe to other people, because people are curious about what you're doing. And then another idea was getting speakers into university to provide a different perspective, perhaps through the student union for engaging the future generations. There were some thoughts about that the younger people were perhaps quite apathetic, or were perhaps weren't very interested in what was going on. I'm not so sure about that, because I think I've met a lot of young people who are interested in things. So it depends on where you look, and I think it depends on how open-minded you are about people's thinking in terms of how they want to take action. And we have to be really open-minded and I think compassionate as well. And yeah, community, I think, was the bottom line around working within our communities and engaging people from where they are and being creative. I think that's it. And Sheila, was there anything else? I know you wrote 3 pages.
Very good summary. You've got a minute left. If you would like to add.
You put me on the spot there.
Right.
But I tell you what, I honestly, I will type all this up, because we did come up with some great stuff. So that will save us the time now.
Wonderful. Yeah, I mean, there was just so many heartwarming things in there. And if you're not going to use the time, I'll take the 30 seconds. There's a brilliant book called Blueprint for Revolution by Serda Popovic. And in many ways, it reads like one of the marketing books that I've read before about attraction marketing, that, you know, if you want to bring people into your world, you have to, you know, create an enticing environment for them to be part of. And I think the way you've described your actions is very much starting within and becoming the type of person that people would want to gravitate to. And therefore you create movements that are magnetic, you know. So I really love what you've shared there. So thank you both, and look forward to seeing your nights. And thank you for taking that action on. Cool. Well, thank you very much. We're going to go on to our next group now. Our fourth and final group, in fact, already. who's our representative from our fourth group of building parallel structures? There's a lot of you on the screen, so if I'm not seeing you raise your hands, please do.
We failed miserably to choose one.
Well, here's your chance. Someone's going to have to speak up. Are you volunteering, Shirley?
I'll volunteer unless somebody else would like to do it. I did make some notes. Anybody else? No? Okay, it's me.
Go ahead, Shirley.
Do you have your camera on as well so we can see you? Or
yeah, sorry, the connection wasn't very good, so I put it off. Hang on.
No worries.
Thank you, Shirley.
So we had a really good discussion. Lots and lots of things covered in the time available. We talked about different, well, particularly the PHA and alternative healthcare systems, which I think we're all agreed is one of the most important things, but also trying to get people to look after their health naturally and move away from just giving out more and more medicine. We talked a lot about food, and there was lots of suggestions in the chat for different ways of forming food associations. Brighton and Hove Community Cooperative was described. They have got quite a good system already up and running, looking at setting up their own boxes and having their own local supply chain. There was a suggestion about putting money in, finding plots of land, getting farmers to build grow the food rather than people, but also having people use the land. There's one of those set up near us, and they've just got extra land, and so now they're wondering how they can use that land to get the food to the people. And so I think there's quite a few food type organisations already up and running. Permaculture was mentioned. We talked about how some of these are set up. Some are cooperatives. We didn't actually mention it, but there's a lot of community interest foundations. Some of them are set up in those ways. There were lots of things in the comments, so I hope you will pick up from the comments. There was lots of websites and things shared, which not everybody will be able to see. We then talked about the common law system, because if we're going to have something as a parallel system, then the legal system is not doing it at the moment for us. So I think it's something that we could certainly, some people at least could go and look at it. But there was a video that was shared quite a lot yesterday, and it's gone out. Richard Bobes, was it? I can't just quite remember what the name was. And that's definitely worth watching. A few of us had seen it, and if anybody's not seen it, I would definitely recommend it. And they have a website, and his main action was to tell people to educate ourselves, and that if we were all educated, even if we can't change the system, we can challenge the system. And at the moment, the system is not challenged because none of us know how to do it. It's been educated out of us, is what the guy said last night, and he's absolutely right. We all just think we can't do anything, and I think that is. I have young children who are younger, and I was talking to my daughter today, and she said that, and they're in their mid-20s, people just don't know what to do. They just think that what they've got is all that they can have. They are paralyzed into not knowing what to do. And so it's going to be up to some of us to show them what actions they can actually take. And I think once they realize they can do something about it, they will be much more enthused about stopping it. They don't want this any more than we do. The fact they've been brought up with it doesn't mean they're any more keen on some sort of digital prison any more than we are. So I think, if we can get actions and then share the information and get them enthused about what they can do, then it's going to be a completely different, it'll be completely different, I'm sure of it. Focus on what we can do as well was the other thing. I think that was the main points. I apologize if I missed anything.
Thank you. I actually forgot to start the timer in your group. So, well, thank you so much, Shirley. I mean, there's just so many fascinating ideas and resources that have been shared tonight. There's some common threads that we've heard. Community is a very strong one. Cooperation, collaboration, empowerment, common law, interestingly, looking at how we use the legal frameworks alongside a whole range of ideas. Now, of course, ideas themselves are worthless without execution. And the challenge under the current environment, and for those of you who saw my webinar that we hosted on Elevate before Christmas about how to thrive in uncertain times, really spoke into the fear-based environment that we're in, our state of mind. If we're in a negative state of mind and a fear-based state of mind, it actually inhibits our creativity. And again, that word creativity came out multiple times during tonight's discussion. So it really does come down to our personal responsibility of standing guard at the door of our mind to ensure that we are in that elevated state, so that we are enabling that creative faculty within oneself so that we can actually apply what we're learning. Because from that empowered state, we can move from fear to action. And I think there's this almost there's this inhibition of action that we're witnessing, and it's how do we break through that? How do we take this breakdown in culture and society to become a breakthrough to the next phase of our evolution, I suppose? So yeah, I can't help but fail to, when I hear this such enthusiasm and great ideas, feel a great sense of hope that there is that creativity amongst us and that passion and that desire and drive. But I know that my inner voice, the executor in me who wants to go out and make things happen is saying, well, what do we do with this information? How do we make it come alive? There's a couple of things, and we'll close out in the final 15 minutes around how do we move forward. But there's a few things to take comfort from. Firstly, a number of great resources have been shared this evening. We've got some great change makers on this call tonight who in their own right are doing great things within their own organizations. Let's be confident in promoting what we do so that we can share the great resources that are out there. So we do need to find a way to compile those resources to make it easy for people to connect with the different projects. And that's a task that I'm very happy for Elevate to take on. How do we start to pull that together? And there's some really smart people in our network who are, and even on my team, who are brilliant at taking information and organizing it in a way that's really easy to understand. So we can help with that. But then also creating action plans. That if there's 10 key actions that we can take. I'm a firm believer that there are horses for courses, and that this is now the scattering of the seeds. As I mentioned, I was part of a call earlier today where we were talking about strategy, we're talking about tactics, we're talking about action, we're talking about values. The strategic conversation isn't for everyone. Some people want to get straight into action. The creative part isn't always for everyone. It's about providing the opportunities for people to fit in where they fit in best and become attracted to the things they're most aligned to. And again, that's something I would like Elevate to play a role in. How do we signpost people to things that are available to them? And connect the dots between the skills, because we've got so many skill sets just on this call. If we were to catalog the skills and experience on this call, we'd be blown away. We'd be blown away. And we've got quite a few Brits on the call, and we're very humble about our skill sets, but we should be proud of the skills and abilities that we have, and particularly at this time. Now is the time to claim those superpowers that's within each of us, because we need those superpowers now. We really do. And I know there's some amazing skill sets on this call alone. So let's take the last 15 minutes of the call to share ideas upon, where do we go from here? What would you like to see? I'm instantly hungering for like a weekend event where we can take a real facilitated process around these discussions and actually come out with some of those key ideas and draw up plans. That's what I'm yearning for. But what would you like to see? And again, let's have an open discussion. The best way to do this without descending into chaos is probably for you to either raise your digital hand, pressing the reaction button so that you can raise your hand, or physically. But bear in mind, physically, I've got 3 screens worth of you here now, so I can't see you all. But let's hear from you. Where do we go from here? What would you like to take from tonight, and how can we move this forward? How can Elevate help? How can we help you? Let's hear your thoughts on where do we go from, how do we start to move forward from this wonderful discussion tonight? Shannon, can I come to you? Thank you for raising your hand.
Sorry, can you?
Yep.
Well, it's not Sean, it's actually Graham. So
Graham, okay, now your camera's on, I can tell.
Yeah. So in our discussion group tonight, there was quite a lot of talk around straw man and things like this. And I've been part of different groups where it's always mentioned. I think one of the things that would be really interesting from my point of view is if we could find somebody who has knowledge of the law and the legal system who can validate what the actual position is around this straw man and using the law as such. Somebody was talking about the whole thing about, if you track back from your birth certificate and whether you're part of the financial system, it's how that can actually be used, whether it can be used productively to fight the system as it exists at the moment, whether we can actually do that. So that would be my contribution, whether we can find somebody who could actually elaborate on it legally about whether it's a viable option.
Yeah, that's really strong. There's a professor I connected with at Cambridge University who's a scholar in common law specifically. And there's a couple of lawyers within our community who have feet in kind of both camps in terms of the different legal structures. So I think there's a legal conversation there. I also think this is talking about creativity and innovation. I think that the era that we live in right now, people talk about the founding fathers of the United States and the Constitution, and that's of a time and place. But here in the United Kingdom, we've just left Europe. We're in this chaotic environment. Isn't this an opportunity to think creatively about a constitution for the United Kingdom? Isn't this an opportunity to actually put in writing? Because the problem is with the common law is the lineage, when you go back to some of the original articles, there's all these arguments about why they're no longer valid and how they've been surpassed or superseded. And that's a debate. Like if we open that can of worms now, we'll be here until midnight, if not longer. But I think there's also the opportunity to start from scratch and say, well, where do we, what kind of document, this is revolutionary times. We don't have to go to war to create a constitution. We can look at new ways of actually creating a legal framework that serves us. It just takes the courage and the bold thinking to actually, and the expertise to come together and say, well, let's do things differently. And that's the miracle. This is the power of this time. So thank you for bringing that up, Graham. I really appreciate that. Francis?
Yeah, I mean, I was just going to say that in response to the point that you just made, that we already have apparently a written constitution in Magna Carta, and that has never been superseded apparently. So I've heard various people talking about it, and that the way to enforce that is to insist on juries, because that's our right. If we end up in court, we should be judged by a jury, and the jury has the right and the power. They are the ultimate deciders whether or not the law that we're being dragged into court for should actually apply. And that seems hugely powerful to me. And somebody said in the chat, Richard said, if we do not break the political mold, we cannot proceed. It is a closed shop. And I think he's got a very good point. I was saying something similar. The fact is that if we don't tackle this from the top, I mean, don't get me wrong, everything that people have been talking about, and the co-op in particular that somebody was talking about, they sound fantastic. And if I could find out about things locally like that, I'd be up for joining them, definitely. But I think they're going to be attacked while we still have the same sort of people driving for this new world order and, and a one world government. And they're not going to tolerate a lot of people trying to go off and get around the system. So we have to attack that system. And that the way we attack it is by ending up in court and using common law and juries to decide what should still apply. And then hopefully having regulations actually eventually thrown out, and people, and the politicians who've been doing this to us, they need to be held to account by those juries and be told that they had no right in the first place to be taking away inalienable rights. And yes, if we don't do that, it's going to be very hard for us to set up anything that can really survive, however much I'm in favor of it. We just need to stop people from having the power to say, no, you can't do this.
Yeah. I think there's a hunger for political and legal transformation. These are two big subjects, and that's big thinking. But there's a simplicity to it as well. So simple but not easy.
No, I'm not saying it's easy. I'm saying it's rather daunting, and And I fear, though, that if we don't tackle it from that side as well, at least, the smaller things that we're trying to push and to get away from the system will be attacked and made very difficult.
Well, this is, I mean, I was at an event 2020, 2021, and we said these are historic times and it's time to make history. You know, this is the time to make history. This is where we have to have that big thinking. We have to come away from fear so we can get into that big thinking about where do we go from here and how do we set a new standard. You know, it's the opportunity is there. The how is the blur. But if we have a strong enough why, a strong enough purpose, a strong enough reason, then the how will emerge. Like that is historically shown itself to be true over and over again. So thank you for your points. Ellie, I'm going to come to you next.
Oh, hi, me?
Yes, you.
Oh, what am I saying?
I don't know. You raised your hand. What are you saying?
oh, I'm so sorry. I don't know. I meant to unraise it because I think someone else asked it. I'll unraise.
No worries. You unraised. Thank you.
Thank you.
Margarita, then if you're raised, then we'll come to you next.
Yeah, hi. Can you hear me? Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Hi. Yeah. So basically, two things. One is I put in the comments again the link to the conversation actually about common law. Just last night I heard, and you know, with William Cate, and he explained very well. I think maybe you would want to consider to invite him to educate us, to talk, because he explained the difference between, you know, various narratives, and he said Magna Carta is just stated. Magna Carta is existent, and it is a part in. We have that power. And yes, talked about 12 juries, and I think he's one of the good sources to possibly, you know, listen to. And he's basically his advice is to get educated and educate everyone. We just will regain that power by mass education, you know. And they don't teach that in schools. Kids don't know, and even, you know, adult generation don't know. So it's forgotten. So we must get back to it. Yeah. And second, I was talking about, like, we know about food shortages and many difficulties probably we will we will face in the future. Hopefully not, but there are lots of good sources of information. There are preppers, particularly. It's very you know, very I mean, lots of people in America, I understand, you know, are into it. And there's one particular very well known prepper, Mike Adams, Health Ranger, and he's got lots of amazing free information. He's got ebooks, and I would advise, I can put the link, people to go into it. And maybe you may want to consider, people may want to consider, because I think it's better when we learn together, when we get together, and we can go through the material there and there, and we can have debates or discussions to make sure we understand you know, this knowledge, and learn all the tips and see what we want to do about that. It's on personal level as well as on group level. This is what my kind of you know, view is. So yeah, thank you.
Thank you for that. Yeah, thank you very much. The law thing, there's a couple of people I'd like to invite for a debate on it, a discussion around, because I know that there are anytime there's something that comes around with promise with common law, there's a lot of excitement and energy around it, which is great. But then there's always a counterbalance to that, and we've got to be able to look at the counterbalance and say, okay, well, within that range, what is actually our opportunity? Like there's a couple of people I'd like to bring together, including William, on that, to really explore that and hash it out. Ray, over to you.
Can you hear me?
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm just throwing some sort of vague thoughts into the mix, because I agree with everything. Well, lots of things have been said tonight. But I think your slide early on, where you had the 4 pillars, you know, you're talking about political activism, and to me that sounds like a reasonable approach, as in we hit it in lots of different ways, so we don't have to do any one thing. And then there's big themes about, I think we all seem to agree, we need to join together with other groups, whether it's Together or Save Our Rights or whatever, whether it's Together Group or whatever. So there's loads of people, even in the common law and related space, there's tons of people doing stuff. And it's just, how do we work together? And I think something, again, this is not sort of throwing it out there because I don't know, it's all pretty vague at the moment. Last year we were talking about having these working groups do various things. And I think and it's great, things are moving in the right direction, but I think if we're not careful, in a year's time, we'll be here going, oh yeah, we really need to translate this into action. You see what I mean? I'm thinking, how do we, I know it's not giving you the solution, but I'm thinking somehow we need to translate this stuff into action so we can say, by the end of March or by the end of June, actually we achieved that, we did that. Because otherwise there's a danger we could get to this time next year, couldn't we? And we go, yeah, we've got all this stuff we still need to do, and we're no further forward. I know it sounds negative, but I think in a way we need to sort of
really important point, and I think
harden ourselves to make progress.
I agree. Yeah, I think particularly around the more constructive things that we've talked about tonight around building the future. That's often gets left on the sidelines when there's a new campaign that we need to jump on. It's like, okay, well, this bill is coming out, or this central bank digital currency, or this is coming. So we forego everything. So it's almost about segmentation and making sure that those 4 pillars are covered, and in coalition,
And maybe we do just try and talk about for a few seconds about solutions rather than just say, because I think it's very positive, and especially when we look at the macro stuff that's happening in the world. There's loads of really positive things, and I think it's moving in the right direction. So it's only how can we accelerate it?
Exactly.
So I think those 4 pillars, I think that gives us a big clue. Whether we have working groups or something, and then we have another one who's in charge of linking with other groups. There's something that there's a way we can structure it, isn't there? I know we had lots of conversations last year, but I think
let's rebuild that conversation. Really up for that, Ray. Let's pick up on that. Thank you. Okay, so we're coming up for time. So we've got 1 minute left, but we've got 4 hands. So I'm going to say this: feel no obligation to stay right to the end. I'm going to honour the last few people who have their hands raised to make sure they get to share. If you need to tap out now at 10 p.m., that's okay. I'm not going to be able to stay all night. This is my 4th meeting in a row since 1 p.m. Without a break. So I'll stay on for another however long it takes to get these final few hands contributions. What I'll say to everyone is, if you haven't yet joined our Elevate community at weareelevate.org, that's going to be your best place to continue the conversation, share your thoughts, share your reflections. So that's simply weareelevate.org. Come and join the conversation there. And this is just a starting point. To me, this is the beginning of something. How we take this forward is the key. If you are someone like Ray, who is very much into the project execution, action orientation, operations, that's the type of expertise I personally need by my side. So if you're one of those people who is really great at taking ideas into action, mapping out action plans, logistics, get in touch. We really need your expertise. So thank you to everyone who's been with us. If you do need to leave now, that's absolutely fine. weareelevate.org. Come and join the conversation. But now I'm going to hand over to Lucia to share your takeaways. Oh, sorry, I've just muted you again. I'm sorry. I was trying to unmute you. Lucia, I've just muted you again. My bad.
Can you hear me?
Yep.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we've got you. Yeah.
Right. Can you hear me? Okay. Yeah, it's Lucia. Hi. Yeah, thanks, Dan. I just wondered, could Elevate galvanize all of this, all these different organizations, create this mega conference, probably north of the Watford Gap, in a big venue, and invite the King to come and be on our side and to, speak and take things forward. There's an opportunity. He's got his big day coming up in May. Let's make this happen really soon. If again, it's maybe not possible, but I just thought that's on my cortex this evening.
Wow. Okay, that's big thinking.
King Charles.
That's conversation in itself. I think that would spark a big debate. Whether he
bloody hell, he's not on our side, sadly.
See, let's not
He's made that very clear.
Are you sure?
Yes,
Yeah,
because he was there chatting with.
Oh, yeah, the coronation, right? Okay,
right.
yeah. Instead of putting the money into the coronation, yeah.
Well, there's a time we'll continue that conversation another time. We'll be here all night. But yes,
okay.
The idea of we've just moved house. I've spent the last week or so really imagining how Elevate can become that conduit, that connector, and facilitator. We were caught in transition of trying to be all things to everyone last year, and as a result, we made limited progress. We made some progress, but limited. But my background is in accelerating ideas and working with startups. So actually, I'm well positioned, and some of my connections are well positioned to actually support organizations and actually galvanize a lot of these things. So it's really at the core of where I'd like Elevate to go. But I need your support. We've got a very small team. So if you would like to support us initially in a volunteer capacity, we don't have the finances to hire at this point. But fundraising, we want to do fundraising activities so that we can pay people for their work. We've got a small paid team as it stands, but we need your help. So if you've got skills, resources you'd like to contribute, do let us know. We do need your help. So thank you, Lucia. I really appreciate that. Sean, over to you. Good to see you.
Good to see you. Yeah. Just listening to what Ray was saying, and I think it was John was saying it as well. And Richard said bits of this as well. But the whole thing with there's a lot of talk of getting things done on like a macro kind of scale, and obviously ideally that would be great. That's what we need. That would be brilliant. But I think ultimately it all starts on a micro scale. I think it all has to start on a micro scale, on a local level. And from what we were saying before about starting small, projects or groups that within the local areas that then sort of disseminate everything out. And by creating those kind of smaller groups, eventually it does feed out onto a macro level. Obviously, the more you do it, the more it feeds out. But I think that the problem we have is everybody's at a different stage, aren't they? And, awake people are at a different stage. People that aren't quite awake yet are at various stages as well. So it's where do we start? That's the stumbling block, really, for a lot of this stuff, because where do you target it? Because everyone's at a completely different level. And I think that's why it does really need to start at nursery level, at school level, children, because when kids are learning how the world works, and we're showing them how the world actually is rather than how the world is pretending to be, and we make sure that they're able to think in a creative way, and well, kids do think in a creative way anyway, but they're able to see the world for what it is, not what we are told it is, then I think that's always going to start. And obviously this is not going to be something that happens quick. It's going to be something that's a long-term thing, isn't it? But I do think a big part of it, and I'm biased because I'm a creative, but I do think a big part of it is creativity. And I'm not talking about just things like, like creative activities. That's kind of the creative doing side of things, but I'm more talking about the creative being side of things. And developing because the whole part of being a creative is it's developing your connection to the natural world as well as yourself and to others as well. It's all about connections, and creativity in itself is about connections. And it's something that comes natural to all of us, even if we don't think it does. It does. It comes natural to every single one of us. We're all creatives in one way or another. And I think understanding that and harnessing the things that we do that are creative and the things that we are as creative beings, I think that is, and doing it at a micro level and then expanding it out, I think is the thing that's gonna start big things changing. And so setting up like little community groups, I guess, little community projects that are based around creativity, based around the natural environment in particular. There's some near me, and I mean I'm based in Nottingham. There's some near me that are things like forest schools. They stand outside of the curriculum. They don't teach the curriculum as is. They teach a completely separate, more holistic and more natural way of being. So yeah, so those kind of things I think are really useful and powerful things we can go in. Yeah.
Thank you for that, Sean. Yeah, I think that I was at a workshop recently, a 2-day workshop in Glastonbury, and a couple of people on the call here tonight were there as well. And we were talking about the micro, the meso, and the macro. You know, when you're talking about political transformation and legal transformation, that's the kind of top-down transformation, but really like the bottom-up piece is equally powerful. And you know, you're working at the tip of the iceberg and at the root then, you know, and I think there's room. And again, it's finding what's happening out there and starting new things and signposting, accelerating, amplifying, fortifying what's already happening out there. So yeah, very powerful. Thank you, Sean. I'd love to stay in touch, by the way. There's some really good ideas there. Thank you for that. Michael, come to you next.
Hey, thank you, Dan. So when I was thinking about, I went into the group with the creating parallel structures. What we agreed on is that the social and political structures and economic, every system that we humans have designed and built was created long before the internet. So they were all created top down, but I think we recognize, at least this group of people recognizes, that it needs to be side by side. It needs to be, you know, in other words, flat. So as far as what I wanted to bring up is that I believe that the best solution would be a distributed, imagine like a distributed country. It doesn't exist in physical form. It has no land, but there are citizens of that country, and this country has its currency. It has a news organization. It has social media outlets. And if we, by coming together and creating these parallel structures, we give other people something to move to before the structure that they're currently living in falls to pieces. I personally don't believe that changing the existing systems is possible. I'd rather not spend, you know, a whole lot of effort. I think that they're going to fall apart all by themselves. But I am very interested in creating this new structure, and I think it needs to be open and distributed, and you know, but it's got to be like a country. We have to think about it in that way.
Yeah, Michael, fascinating. We think very alike: open, distributed, decentralized. These things are, yeah, these are key words, key themes, key concepts. There are groups and individuals working on this very idea. Yeah, I will need to find the links, but you know, digital country, you know, this using the kind of decentralized, distributed technologies to build effectively new countries outside of the physical realm. It's fascinating to see what people are experimenting with. You know, this is where there's really creative solutions. So let's keep our eyes and minds open to the things that are emerging. Thank you for sharing that. Ellie, you raised your hand. This time, are you back for more, or are you?
My real. But thank you so much. I can hear in your voice you're exhausted. I think that Michael's right. What I wanted to, I can't even remember. I get distracted by other people's like really interesting conversation. But if you want to hold an event, I do have. I'm full-time employed, but I do have some skills to help to organize stuff. And I think it'd be really great to just have person-to-person conversations. And I sent my email to you because I also was I'm the one that knows David Martin, and I think that he has some interesting insights to give. They do, people on his group seem to be very American-centric and somewhat MAGA or whatever it's called. I'm American, but anyway, but I'm, yeah, anyway. So I'm very happy to help in creating a small group and then a larger group and then a larger group if I can. I don't know what the budget could be. I'm not great at fundraising, but I can try. But we did find a lot of things. There are so many resources that our group came up with, the permaculture, finding ways of connecting. Yeah, so that's my offer, my
Yeah, I've taken down your email and thank you for sharing that. And I look forward to connecting. So thank you for that.
But you're tired and you've moved, and, thank you so much for all you do. I've been following you for a while now. I'm not sure how long now, probably a year and a half, but
much appreciated. Yeah, I mean, my regulars will know I always get to the end of these calls, my voice is shredded. You know, it's just become a habitual thing. I need to get a vocal coach. I speak from my throat rather than from my diaphragm.
Vocal coach as well. I can help you with that.
Yes, and I've also, and Stephen, who was on the call with me tonight, I met him in person in Bournemouth today. We had a meeting earlier today. He was my first meeting of the day, and I've been in meetings since 1 o'clock. So it's been a lot of talking and dialogue. So lots of really great stuff here tonight. We'll capture what you've shared. The debrief has been obviously recorded, so we'll share that inside the Elevate network. Again, if anyone objects to that, just let me know, and we'll address that. But again, the Elevate community is a place for you to share ideas, share your projects, tell us what's going on. It's a place to connect and collaborate, co-create. You know, a lot of the time, you know, because I started this community, I feel like kind of the weight on my shoulders of like, oh, it's up to me, but it's not. It's up to us. It's up to all of us. And, you know, as I said, we have the skills, we have the ideas. It's about, I'm happy to help create the structures and the opportunities for us to connect and collaborate. That's what we can do. We can create the container for the game to unfold. And as you know, I'm deeply passionate about every one of those 4 things. You know, I can't pick a lane. That's my problem. You know, that's why it's much easier for me as Elevate to say, let's support, because I can then play in the political game, the creative game. You know, I can be involved in every part, but by supporting others who are doing the great work, we can do that as Elevate. So please do share your suggestions with us. Do share your ideas. Do join the discussion in the Elevate community. And I want to conclude by going full circle to where one of our contributors stated at the beginning around personal responsibility and about being the change you want to see. You know, we talked tonight about how do we build free societies. Let's remember that a society is nothing more than a collection of individuals. And every one of us is an individual, and every one of us is part of a society, whether we like it or not. So I want to leave you with this to ponder upon, is this idea of inner freedom. It's something that really struck me a couple of years back. I spent most of my younger life, my younger years, and indeed into my adult life, into my mid-20s, really not having a voice. I didn't have any self-confidence. You wouldn't believe it now. You can't shut me up, literally. But truly, I was one of the quietest kids in school, and I never had the confidence to speak up. And it was for fear of being judged. It was for fear of what people might think of me. It was for fear of what people might say, or if I said something wrong. It's if you go to the deep root, it's a fear of not being enough, or the fear of not being loved. Like, that's when you go to the heart of it all. And I've worked on that for years, and I've made amazing progress. I wouldn't be able to do what I'm doing today if I hadn't. But when I came to that point of acceptance, that loving acceptance of oneself, I realized this idea that we can be truly free when we are free from the fear of judgment of others, you know, the fear of what others might think, those fears that hold us back, this inner freedom. And it was a liberating moment. I remember walking in the fields in Bristol towards the suspension bridge, and that just had this sense of inner freedom emerging within me. And it was just, you know, there's nothing anyone could have said. It was just this ethereal experience that liberated something within me. So I want to give you the chance tonight to close in your reflections. For you personally, what does inner freedom mean to you? And what do you need to let go of or embrace in order to find a deeper level of inner freedom for you? Because when you walk around tomorrow in your streets, in your community, and you smile and you connect with the people on your streets, they'll feel that sense of freedom within you. But not only will they feel it, they'll see in your eyes like a mirror the freedom within themselves. That might sound esoteric, but it's true. We have to live with a sense of inner freedom and that purpose. And we're in a meaning crisis. People are yearning for purpose and meaning. And freedom can give us that purpose. It can give us that meaning. So tonight, as you rest, ponder upon what does it mean to find inner freedom for you, and how can you ignite that and light it up within you, to find that sense of deep freedom You know, journal. If you're a writer, journal on it. I'm a big advocate in journaling. Ask yourself, how do I find it even more freedom within myself? So we've talked about all the external tonight, but think tonight for you as we close out, how do you find more freedom in your heart? How do you find that inner freedom? And how will that show up? And what will that manifest in your life for you? And what impact will that create in the world around you as you unleash that freedom that's within your soul? So I'll leave you on that note tonight, as I literally am gasping for my final word.
Thank you.
And thank you all for participating. Don't shout.
Brilliant.
Zach's above me. Thank you for playing full out, for contributing, and for sharing your time, your energy, your thoughts, your ideas. And let's continue the conversation. If you're brand new to Elevate, I really do hope we'll see you inside the community. And do watch out. We're going to have many more of these conversations, you know. And for those of you walking away thinking, well, how do we take this forward? Come and share it. Let us know, because we're hungry. We want to build on this. So I'd love to hear from you. And thank you again for being here. Big love to all of you. Stay free. I hope you enjoyed hearing the different ideas that we can explore in order to build a free society. I'm sure it stimulated many ideas within yourself as well. And I would love for you to be part of the discussion. So please do come and join us inside the Elevate community if you haven't done so already. Visit weareelevate.org. Our supporters who contribute monthly to our membership have access to all of our events, all of the replays, exclusive access to pre-release, early release content before our interviews and our content goes live, and a whole host of other benefits. So please do come and join us as a supporter inside the Elevate community at weareelevate.org and take part in the conversation. I hope to see you soon. Let's go out there and build a free society, elevate humanity, and enrich the world. Thanks once again for tuning in. My name is Astin-Gregory. This is the Elevate community.